Hello again, I am Blunty. Now, those of you who watch me on a regular basis, perhaps you'll subscribe to get every delicious video I put out, perhaps not, I really don't care. But if you've watched me for long enough, you will have seen the video where I got the Samsung Galaxy Tab, the 7-inch Android tablet that's been put out to see if it can smack Apple around a bit and put up some competition for the iPad. Well, I've had 2 weeks with it now. 2 weeks to really sink my teeth into what this thing is all about. And is it really up to the hype? Is it just not quite enough in the right direction? Is it unbelievably, extraordinarily good? Well, let's take a look at what it has to offer, and then we'll come back and decide whether it's worth your money.
The look of it. Well, considering this and almost every product even remotely like it are basically just a slab with a glossy screen on the front, it's kinda hard to stand out, but it's an attractive enough piece of industrial design. Camera and LED flash on the back, power button, volume rocker, micro SD memory card slot next to a SIM card slot on the right edge. Now, one of the most argued things about the iPad is, of course, Apple's allergy to Adobe Flash, and the Galaxy Tab, being an Android device, can fling Flash just fine. So let's see how it does with some Flash sites. This is an on-demand TV streaming site. It's entirely flash heavy, and as you can see, while the Galaxy Tab happily loads it, it's not exactly the same responsive experience you get on a desktop browser. And because of the way Flash is inherently designed with mouse input in mind and not a touchscreen, sometimes things don't work quite like you expect them to, like this scroll bar. But the main thing Flash is actually used for online, aside from displaying ads, is video. And that works just fine. Some flash-heavy sites do cause the responsiveness to drop, and sometimes the chugging is pretty severe. But I'm gonna call duh on that one. Flash chews up CPU cycles and eats battery, we all know this. But it's there if you want it, and it works acceptably enough to get the job done of displaying the content you're after. When it comes to games, this thing is great. It's got plenty of grunt to push around a plethora of playtime pixels, and there are some pretty good games hitting the Android market these days. Even Angry Birds, which is like the hottest game right now. Frankly, I don't know why I don't like it much, but other people just won't shut up about it. You've got the Android market on here, of course, and with only a few exceptions, all the apps I tried worked perfectly fine on the much larger screen. There were a few that looked a bit janky, and a few that wouldn't load full screen, but they seemed to be the exception rather than the rule, and they did all work. The Galaxy Tab has 2 cameras, and the default camera app is nice. Pretty much the same as what's on the Galaxy S, unsurprisingly, so you get all those lovely options and controls to tweak and mess with. Annoyingly though, while the rear 3-megapixel camera takes stills and standard def video just fine, the 640x480 front-facing camera, which is a vast improvement over the front camera on the Galaxy S, it needs to be said, so video calls will look just fine. Annoyingly, it utterly refuses to record video. As soon as you try and switch it into video mode, it'll kick you in the teeth and just switch back to the rear camera. The video quality is okay. It's not HD, sitting at 720x480, but it's smooth and will suffice for basic duties. The stills it takes aren't what I'd call impressive. They're kinda soft and lacking in detail and contrast, but for a simple snapshot to plop on a website or to email to someone, it'll do just fine. But it wouldn't be the first camera I'd reach for if I had the option. The camera app itself can get a bit glitchy at times though. A couple of times I actually had to do a hard reboot of the whole device because the camera app wouldn't actually show me a live image from the camera no matter what I tried. The ebook reader is quite nice too, offering up a good wealth of options to make your reading experience as nice as possible. I actually like the Android app for this much more than the equivalent apps I've tried on the iPad, and the size of the Galaxy Tab it makes for a much more natural feeling reading experience because it's so close to the common sizes of paperback novels. The same can't be said for reading comics though. In this case, the apps I tried were all more glitchy than the iPad selection, and the screen size felt a bit too small to read this type of content comfortably without having to zoom in and out all the bloody time. But just because I think the iPad is better at comics, don't take me to mean that it's a bad experience here, because it's not. It's just not quite as good. Video playback of standard and 720p content went just fine. It works, and works as you'd expect it to, and I didn't have any problems playing back the most common video formats. It does need to be said, however, that because of the nature of the way Android devices handle multitasking, it can be pretty easy to have a whole bunch of crap loaded up, chewing up CPU cycles and memory in the background, making the whole device chug appallingly. But there are apps you can use to quickly and easily track what's running and kill off the background stuff to bring back all the nippy power instantly. It's just something you have to do manually, whereas the way the iPad uses multitasking, you'd never have to do that. The Galaxy Tab is also essentially a giant phone, and while you can make calls on it just as you would on a regular Android phone handset, it does feel pretty damn goofy because of the size. But it's nice to have the option. Overall, I really like the hardware, and despite what Steve Jobs says, I think a 7-inch tablet is a bloody great size. On the whole, it felt responsive and powerful, with the 1GHz A8 processor and 512MB of RAM keeping things snappy. And the battery life was better than I had expected. It'll get most people through a day with aggressive use and 3G on. It's not the marathon battery life that the iPad somehow squeezes out, but you can expect about 6 hours of average mixed use per charge pretty confidently. I think the Galaxy Tab is the first truly good Android tablet on the market. There have been others that came before, sure, but in truth they were mostly bloody awful. But the Galaxy Tab is a pleasure.
So there you go, that's the Samsung Galaxy Tab. What do you guys think? Personally, I think it shows a hell of a lot of promise, and it does some things really well, and it's lovely, and I was surprised that I like the size so well, because, you know, Steve Jobs came out and said, oh, we looked into doing a 7-inch tablet, and nobody's going to want it. It's too much compromise, and you lose too much screen real estate, and blah. You know what? Steve Jobs is wrong on this one. 7-inch, this tablet is a terrific size. There is a reason why a lot of novels and stuff are about that size. It fits really comfortably in your hand. Price-wise is where we have a problem. The outright price is far too high. And I'm not even going to mention what the price is, because as I record this, I'm seeing news starting to pour in of the prices starting to fall already. They've realised that the price is too high. They're being really competitive. They've got to pop the price down. So, you know, it could come to an outright price, which is just a perfect sweet spot, and snap it up instantly. But there are also some really good data plans. You get these on a data plan with a carrier, and Optus in Australia and Vodafone in Australia have announced their plans. I think Telstra haven't done theirs yet, but the data plans are actually really good value. I mean, surprisingly good value. And I was using mine with a prepaid Vodafone data SIM in it, and it worked brilliantly. Absolutely brilliant. I was really happy with it. Surprised, actually, how really well it worked. But there you go. It's not quite there yet. It's definitely not a don't buy it. I mean, if you love Android and you're, oh, Apple, I don't like Apple and iPad, stupid, this is a really good option for you. But I'm really hoping they spit out a couple of software updates just to polish it up a little bit, just to make it just feel a little bit richer, feel a little bit smoother, because it did get a little bit janky in places. But same thing happened with the Samsung Galaxy S, and they patched that, and now it runs lovely and smooth and everything. So who knows? Anyway, that's the Samsung Galaxy Tab. It's definitely worth a look. It's not terrific, but it's not craptastic. It's just in that middle ground of, oh, maybe I will, maybe I won't. It's a tough call to make on this one. Thanks for watching. I'm Blunty, and I will catch you next time.